In this orthokeratology case, we have a patient whose refraction is mostly cylindrical against the rule. We have an against the rule toric cornea, but I would make note that we've only got about half of that toricity on the cornea, so the patient's got 50% of the refractive astigmatism coming from the lens. And so really what we're looking to do is not to sphericalize or mold out cylinder in this cornea, but actually mold in just as much cylinder as currently exists, but in the opposite direction. So that said, that's not something very easy to do. Oftentimes, best case scenario is we sphericalize the cornea, but in this case, the patient, if that occurs, we still have about a diopter and a quarter of against the rule astigmatism that's residual. Looking in the posterior topography, we can see that we're getting more of a spherical treatment, and let's go ahead and bring up the lens. So this is the lens that the patient is wearing. Pretty low demand in the vertical meridian like we would expect. It's a very low spherical power, and we want to do most of our molding in the horizontal meridian, so we have a much higher demand. Although that's what the lens looks like, we're still getting a fair amount of molding even in the vertical meridian, and so the patient is progressively getting more hyperopic or less myopic, but the cylinder still persists. So looking at the posterior topography, it looks kind of wavy, and sometimes that would lead me to think that the lens is moving too much, maybe a little bit loose. But looking at the blue in the periphery and also this figure 8 at the very apex of the cornea actually would cause me to think that this lens might be fitting kind of tight. And what that does is it kind of magnifies the corneal toricity that's currently there. And so after treatment, we actually do have more against the rule astigmatism than we started out with. So what I recommend doing in this case is to reduce the topo demand a little bit in this vertical meridian, and also lift the lens in the vertical meridian, so superiorly and inferiorly. Hopefully that will reduce the amount of treatment we're getting here, so that we're left with more treatment in the horizontal meridian, and then also if we can destabilize this lens a little bit, get it to rock a little bit more, perhaps that will also help mold out against the real toricity on the cornea. So we'll want to do this in 50% mode. And so the average K on this cornea is 769. We can see here we're a fair amount flatter, so we can reduce this. Right now that puts us about a diopter less demand than we had previously. And then the other thing we can do is raise this lens a little bit. Because we're in freeform, we have to do the same thing here. And then we can bring the periphery up a little bit. So now we have a lens that's going to seal off even less vertically. Also, there's less topo demand, and hopefully that will kind of blend out this reverse curve or treatment ring that we have in the meridian. And then what we could do in the horizontal meridian is the opposite. So we'll increase topo demand here by about a diopter. And then maybe get the lens to bear down a little bit more here and ensure we're really sealing off. And again, we'll do the same thing because we're in freeform. And I'm just looking for a point where we get a more normal reverse curve, and that looks a little bit better. So we have a pretty atypical lens now, but it's a fairly atypical cornea that we're trying to mold. A little bit more bearing peripherally, horizontally, a little bit less vertically. Overall, this will actually loosen the lens a little bit. And then we've decreased demand here and increased demand, or decreased demand vertically and increased demand horizontally. Looking at the waviness in the posterior topography, this could also be an issue with reduced tear film. So I would probably also recommend that this patient do the non-preserved artificial tears a few times during the day. I would have patients do Soluvisc or liquid gel during the day, 3 to 4 times. And then maybe even consider adding some Refresh Plus or other non-preserved artificial tear or saline inside the lens when it's time to wear the lens, and see if we can smooth out the appearance. So ideally what we want is more pronounced semicircles of reverse curve, temporal and nasal on the cornea, with much less of that superiorly and inferiorly, and hopefully these lens changes will get us closer to that desired topography. The left eye, I would do the same thing. The left eye, it seemed like we had less treatment superiorly and inferiorly, but still it seemed like it was going around more than we expected to. So decreasing demand and applanation of the lens to the cornea vertically while increasing it horizontally should help. So hopefully that's helpful. Best of luck with your patient. Thanks for watching.